Welcome to Trivia Teacher. Today we have Volume 2 of our Serial Killer Trivia. Please tell us your score in the comments. Who was known as the Son of Sam and carried out shootings in New York City during the 1970s? David Berkowitz. Which serial killer earned the nickname the Night Stalker for his home invasion crimes in California? Richard Ramirez. Who was responsible for a series of murders in London during the late 1880s and was never apprehended? Jack the Ripper. Which serial killer was a nurse's aide and believed to have murdered numerous patients via poisoning in the 1970s? Richard Angelo. Who is famously known as the BTK Killer, standing for Bind, Torture, Kill in Kansas during the 1970s and 80s? Dennis Rader. Which serial killer, active in the Pacific Northwest during the 1980s, was convicted of 48 murders and called himself the Green River Killer? Gary Ridgway. Which female serial killer was convicted for the murders of several elderly women in her care and was known as Jolly Jane? Jane Toppan. Who was known as the Cleveland Strangler and was convicted of killing 11 women between 2007 and 2009 in Ohio? Anthony Sowell. Which notorious serial killer was an active cannibal and necrophile, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal? Jeffrey Dahmer. Who, along with his girlfriend Myra Hindley, was responsible for the Moors murders in the 60s in England? Ian Brady. Which serial killer was an American nurse who was convicted of killing 4 people but confessed to killing 27? Charles Cullen. Who was known as the Killer Clown due to his job as a children's entertainer and the murders of over 33 teenage boys and young men? John Wayne Gacy. Which serial killer, active in the 80s and 90s, targeted prostitutes in Florida and was known as the Daytona Beach Killer? Eileen Wuornos. Who, along with his accomplice Leonard Lake, was responsible for the murders in a remote cabin known as the House of Horrors in California? Charles Ning. Which serial killer was convicted for the Plainfield Ghoul murders and made furniture and clothing from human skin and body parts? Ed Gein. Who was known as the Yorkshire Ripper and carried out a series of murders in northern England during the late 1970s? Peter Sutcliffe. Which serial killer, active in California during the late 60s and early 70s, sent cryptic letters to the press and was never identified? The Zodiac Killer. Who was known as the Freeway Killer and was convicted for the murders of at least 16 young men in California during the 70s and 80s? William Bonin. Which serial killer was responsible for a series of gruesome murders in the London East End in the late 1930s and was known as the Monster of London? Peter Curtin. Question 20. Which serial killer, known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf, was convicted of multiple murders in Germany during the early 20th century? Peter Curtin. Which serial killer, known as the Vampire of Sacramento, targeted victims in California during the late 70s and was convicted for multiple murders? Please tell us the answer in the comments. This is the bonus question. Thanks for playing this quiz. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. See you next time.